Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks for joining me once again. So in today's video, I'm going back to my existing CD collection. So you'll recall that the last video I did in this series was Horna, the Finnish black metal band. So now we're going to the next band under H, and this is the last band under the letter H actually. So going from black metal in Finland to death metal in Sweden, the band I'm going to be talking about today is HYPOCRISY. So yes, as I said, Swedish band, probably need no introduction to most people. They are the band formed and fronted by Peter Tegtren. Now, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly because it's spelled T-A umlaut, or whatever they call that thing in Swedish. I know that's the case in German. T-A umlaut G T-G-R-E-N. So I think Peter Tegtren, but sorry if my pronunciation's incorrect. He is probably single-handedly one of the biggest contributors to extreme metal, particularly in Scandinavia, because not only is he in a handful of bands, including HYPOCRISY, but of course he's the owner and producer at Abyss Studios, which became famous after he produced Marduk's Heaven Shall Burn album in 1996. Then a lot of bands came knocking because the sound quality on that album was absolutely killer. So other Swedish bands followed, like Dark Funeral, to get their stuff produced by Peter. And then not even Swedish bands, but also Norwegian bands, like bands such as Enslaved and Immortal, also produced with Peter at Abyss Studios, and that comes into the picture later. So quite a story to tell with this band. But anyway, they are a death metal band. Their sound has evolved over the years, and they have a massive discography. So 13 albums. No, I don't own them all. In fact, I only own 5. So this video is not going to be really long, so I can't do a ranking obviously, but I'll just say this: I have a handful of albums. Some I like more than others, obviously. There are other ones which I don't own that I would like to get, and I'll talk about that as we go through this video. So 2 minutes into it and I haven't even shown an album yet. We'll just get started. So first of all, the first album I'm going to show is the band's debut. So this is HYPOCRISY with Penetralia, which came out in 1991, I think. Yeah, so the band's very first album. What's interesting about this one is it probably stands out the most of all HYPOCRISY albums in the sense that it's different to all the others. So their sound has evolved into what you could call melodic death metal, you know, which is a style that a lot of bands play, and there's different variations of melodic death metal. But what you have on this album is straightforward, brutal, satanic death metal. So sort of think of in the vein of Deicide, especially early Deicide. So if you like that, you know, like fast, intense riffs, blasting drumming, low guttural vocals, sort of robotic vocal patterns in a good way. Yeah, that's what you have on this album. And actually the very first time I heard this band was on the Traces of Death compilation that featured 2 tracks from this album, which are one of them was Slaughtered, which is on another album, and God Is a Lie, which is from this one. I ended up giving that compilation to Mr. Boulder, actually. But yeah, I really like this album. It's one of my favorite HYPOCRISY albums. So yes, they're a Swedish band, but this is going more for the American death metal sound. And that could be to do with the fact that Peter spent some time in the United States, you know, doing some job working over there before he returned to Sweden to form this band. So maybe the American death metal scene was an influence. But yeah, great album, just brutal, fast, straightforward death metal, which is really good, with that kind of satanic theme, as I said. So they do have a lot in common with Deicide. Maybe the difference is they're not as technical as Deicide. Like, I know Deicide's not really a technical band, but the first couple of albums, especially Legion, it was technical a little bit. And this band also doesn't have the same crazy time changes as Deicide. So it's a more brutal but straightforward version of Deicide. So it's fantastic. The vocals are performed by none other than Massi Bromberg, otherwise known as Emperor Magus Caligula of Dark Funeral. So before he was the vocalist of a black metal band, he sang guttural, deep vocals in this death metal band. His voice is fantastic, I have to say. In fact, I probably prefer his death metal voice to his black metal voice. So Caligula. Anyway, yeah, but all really good songs on this. There are no songs that I dislike. I think the 2 singles from this, which you can see on YouTube, you know, they made videos for, were Nightmare and Left to Rot. They are both great tracks. Nightmare even includes some keyboards. So like a lot of Swedish death metal bands, they incorporate some keyboards for atmosphere, but the rest of the time it's relatively brutal. Let me see other songs I really like. Impotent God, the opening track, is fantastic. Good aggressive opener. Yeah, Left to Rot is good, as I said, so is Jesus Fall. Probably my favorite track is God is a Lie, which I first heard on that Traces of Death compilation. You know, just very, I like the delivery of that line, "You are nothing but a piece of shit," in these death metal vocals. Fantastic, but it's just a great track, and it's got some really groovy riff breakdowns in that song. And yeah, all good. The only one minor complaint I have about this album, and I don't mean to be a picky bitch, is the song "To Escape Is to Die." The song itself is okay, but I just don't like the fact that the guitar melodies at the beginning of the song are mimicking the main melody from the Mission Impossible soundtrack. You know, the din-din-din. It's like, I don't know about that. It seems a bit cheesy. But apart from that minor issue, yeah, I really like this album. So yeah, if you're a fan of Deicide, especially early Deicide, check it out. Just great, brutal, straightforward Swedish death metal, which sounds more like American death metal. So that's HYPOCRISY with Penetralia. So the album which came after this was Obscuritatem Osculum. I think I don't own that one. That also had Massey Bromberg on vocals. I would like to get that one because I'm kind of a fan of this style that they played. But anyway, as I mentioned, this band, as time went on, their sound evolved. So it went from brutal death metal, evolving into melodic death metal, but not like Arch Enemy or Soilwork or something like that. It was more kind of symphonic. So it had, I think actually a lot of HYPOCRISY's music has a lot in common with black metal, and that's no surprise considering Peter produced a lot of black metal bands. And if you watch the HYPOCRISY documentary, which is great, you can see it on YouTube, it's free. He mentioned that they started playing around in the studio with a keyboard because there was one in there, and then that became an integral part of their music. But yeah, so their sound evolved, and there are a couple of albums in the late 90s that I really would like to get because I've heard them and they're fantastic. They are, what is it? The Fourth Dimension and Abducted, which is where they started adopting alien themes into their music, which is really interesting as well. Like Abducted, it has some really obscure, weird, experimental vocal styles and everything, but I think that's what makes this band interesting. But anyway, few gaps. The next one I have in the series is Into the Abyss, which came out in 2001, I think. The album before this was the self-titled HYPOCRISY album, which was great. That's where they started incorporating more symphonic elements, and you definitely hear that on this album as well. Yeah, so this one, Into the Abyss, this is part of that new symphonic style that they were going for in the early 2000s. And how I would describe this, it's melodic death metal with raspy vocals, so like almost blackened vocals, and a symphonic edge with the use of keyboards. So again, even if you're not really a death metal fan and you like symphonic black metal, you might appreciate certain elements of this. I know certain people who have said that actually. So yeah, so you could say in this album is a change of sound for the better depending on your taste. So like if you like brutal death metal, you'd probably say it wasn't the best change, but if you prefer melodic death metal, symphonic metal and aspects of black metal, you would say this is a change for the better. Now I will say with this album, while I do like it, I think they were still honing their sound, you know, working through developing that classic HYPOCRISY sound. So it is a good album, just a lot of tracks don't stand out to me. So when I say that, it's not a terrible album, but it's more like background music a lot of the time. But there are some standout tracks which are fantastic. So probably my favorites are track 3 called Resurrected. That has these kind of interesting alien-like groaning vocals. So really unique vocal style, as well as some good melodies in that song, and melody has always been a big part of HYPOCRISY. My other favorite track is track 10, Death Row, No Regrets, because that's very grand, symphonic and atmospheric. So again, sort of in a way similar to aspects of black metal. But undoubtedly, my favorite song on this album, and probably my favorite HYPOCRISY song of all time, is track 6, Fire in the Sky. That is quintessential HYPOCRISY sound, which they became later known. In other words, melodic, catchy, mid-paced, anthemic, atmospheric, brilliant. I just love that track. And especially the keyboard lines in that song, interspersed with the vocals, which are very memorable as well. You just have this HYPOCRISY anthem. It's so good. And I know they always play that song live, Fire in the Sky. glad to note that, because it is one of the best songs HYPOCRISY has ever done. So like, yeah, like I said, this is not a terrible album. It's good, but I think they were still developing their sound, and better albums would follow. So I'm going to talk about those in a moment. But here you have the cover. So lyrics and photos of the band. So this is when they were still a three-piece, sort of the classic lineup of Peter, Michael Hedlund on bass, and Lars Styrka, what a Swedish name anyway, on drums. So yeah, when they were a three-piece. But yeah, very good album, just not one of my favorites by HYPOCRISY, but it's certainly good for the standout and highlight moments, especially if there's just one thing you need to do after this video, go and listen to that song Fire in the Sky, because it's a masterpiece. Yeah, so there we go. That's HYPOCRISY with Into the Abyss from the early 2000s. Now, then the band took a U-turn after this. So this sound, they would come back to this sound, but on another album which followed, they did a complete U-turn, something completely different, probably unexpected by most people. This is HYPOCRISY with Catch-22. So if you're familiar with this band, this is the album that most people, or most fans of this band, love to hate. But I actually don't mind it. It's interesting. You never would have expected this from HYPOCRISY, but this is kind of the equivalent of their nu metal album, or new metal album. And I don't think they were really fans of nu metal, but I heard from someone, I read this somewhere, I think that Peter was influenced by Slipknot of all bands, so they were going for the Slipknot sound. So I'll just say, first of all, as you know, I'm not a huge fan of Slipknot, because I just think it sounds like white noise. There's no melody, it's just screaming. I've got nothing against extreme elements in music, but you need a song, you need a tune in there. And for Slipknot, the majority of the time, no offense, I can't hear that. But yeah, this, you can see how it's nu metal influence, and it's actually not that bad an album. What I do like about it is it stands out just because it's so different. So my criticisms of this album, first of all, the production is terrible. It sounds tinny and like the songs are going through a grinder. Fucking horrible. So much so that Peter went and remastered this album later. So he produced it once again, and they released a different version with a different production, which is apparently much better. I don't have that one. I bought this one secondhand at a market. Secondly, the nu metal sound gets to me a bit sometimes, but the good aspects save this album, I think. So I think, yes, it's not typical HYPOCRISY style, but it's one of the most unique and interesting and stand-outish albums the band has done, just because it's so different. So, yep, still the same three-piece here. So looking at some of the tracks, some of my favorites, actually. So track 2, Destroyed. That's got a good chugging main riff. It does have some nu metal breakdowns, but there are some melodic, clean vocals in the chorus. And I think this was actually the album where they started using clean vocals, and Peter can sing quite well. I really like his clean vocal voice, so that's a standout element of this album. Then track 3, On the Edge of Madness. That's got a catchy mid-pace main riff accompanied by piano melodies, catchy melodic clean vocals in the chorus, and again it's almost anthemic, so there are synths to lift the melodies as well. So even though this was their nu metal album, you can see they were developing that more anthemic sound, which they became famous for later on. Track 4, A Public Puppet. Yeah, that's a good one as well. It's sort of a bit groove metal, a bit nu metal, lacking in melody, but some of the vocal patterns make it quite catchy. Like, yeah, especially A Public Puppet is What I Am. It sticks in your head, so nu metal isn't always bad. Okay, and then track 5, Uncontrolled. That's got a good groove and clean vocals throughout. So very different for HYPOCRISY. Yeah, so it's got that song has a nice mid-pace rhythm, and I think that's where HYPOCRISY sounds best, where it's that kind of 4/4, like that rhythm in their song. That's when the songs sound the most anthemic. The only thing is, after track 5, that's when the album becomes a little bit samey, unfortunately. Like, up to this point, everything sounds good, but then the songs sound a bit interchangeable after that. But one good song towards the end, though, is track 9, Seeds of the Chosen One. That has more of a classic HYPOCRISY edge, so with anthemic clean vocals in the chorus and soaring atmospheric keyboards. So yes, while this album was influenced by nu metal to a degree, it also retained aspects of, you know, melodic death metal, symphonic metal, black metal, and so on, and that classic HYPOCRISY sound. So yeah, interesting album. It's if you like to hear something different, yeah, this one's definitely for you. But having said that, if you listen to it and you don't like it, I understand it. I understand that, but I personally do. Look at this, oh, old nuclear blast order form. Remember those days? Yeah, so cool digipack here, which all folds out, and you've just got the disc, yeah, and pictures of the band. Yeah, so I would say to you this, if a lot you may have heard about Catch-22 and heard terrible reviews or criticisms, but I would say give this album a chance, because as I said, while it's not one of my favorites, it's still interesting because it's different. So give it a go. That's HYPOCRISY with Catch-22. All right, so then they had a few other albums, so there's gaps in the collection, but the next ones I'm going to show, these are where I thought they have really refined and honed their sound to become the classic HYPOCRISY sound, which is my favorite by them. So first of all, this is Virus from 2005, I think. So I think this was the album where, even though on the self-titled album in 2000, they'd sort of hinted at that, as well as Into the Abyss, this is where that melodic, symphonic death metal style evolved into more of that anthemic edge, where the songs were just mid-paced and catchy, still some blast beats sometimes, but the songs just became much more memorable with this melodic style. And actually, I remember when I first bought this, I didn't get around to listening to it for ages, and I've only heard it a handful of times, to be honest, but when I listened to it again the other day, I was really pleasantly surprised by just how good this album is. They have done better than this one, but you can see how it's really refining that sound to what HYPOCRISY became. So, yeah, melodic death metal, yeah, with raspy vocals and some keyboards, that symphonic edge again. But it's interesting because that's also juxtaposed with more sort of straightforward death metal riffs. So it's sort of like a mixed bag of the old and new, but generally going in the direction of the new style. And it unlike other albums where they talked about alien abduction and the paranormal, which is what their main theme came about, this one returned to sort of classic death metal themes like death, torture, drug addiction, and so on. So yeah, it took a sort of steer away from their main concept, but yeah, very interesting. So many good songs on this, like shit, that goddamn battery. Okay, yeah, track 2 Warpath, track 3 Scrutinized is good. They have some funny titles like Craving for Another Killing and Let the Knife Do the Talking. Probably my favorite track on this is track 7, which is 1,000 Lies. Yeah, that's the one, just because it incorporates, it's a slower song, it incorporates some clean guitars for atmosphere, and it has this really dreary, melancholic chorus. And I think that song is actually about drug addiction, heroin addiction, and you know, obviously that's a terrible thing. That's not why I like the song, but the song is just appropriately bleak and melancholic, and it's got a really dark atmosphere. So yeah, that's probably my favorite, 1,000 Lies. But what was the other one? Incised Before Life Ceased is good, and Compulsive Psychosis. Yeah, all good stuff. So yes, this is really the band going in that direction for what the classic HYPOCRISY sound would become. So cool artwork here, very intricate and detailed, and more pictures of the band and lyrics. And so this is when they had become a 4-piece with a second guitarist, and this guy here and here, that's actually Hog from Immortal. So the drummer of Immortal, he joined HYPOCRISY in 2004. So he had been part of Immortal ever since the Blizzard Beasts album, 97. And of course, Immortal went on to get produced by Peter in the Abyss Studios, and I think that's how, that was the connection. That's how Hog joined HYPOCRISY in the end, while still drumming for Immortal. Except I think Hog has now left HYPOCRISY, probably to concentrate on Immortal, but fantastic drummer anyway. Yep, so another good album by HYPOCRISY. This is Virus. And even though I've been doing these in chronological order, in my opinion, the best has been saved for last. Of the HYPOCRISY albums I own, this one is my favorite. This is HYPOCRISY with A Taste of Extreme Divinity. Yep, so bought this album about 10 years ago in a secondhand, flea market again. And at that time, I had just moved overseas, so most of my collection was still at home. So I bought a handful of CDs here. This was one of them, and this is one of those ones I used to listen to again and again. So it has some nostalgic value as well. But in addition to that, it's, in my opinion, it's just my favorite HYPOCRISY album of the ones I own. So, like I said, Virus was going in that direction, but on this one, the songs had just become so memorable, standing out from each other. So again, melodic death metal with symphonic elements and raspy vocals, you know, keyboards for added atmosphere. But again, the guitar melodies played a big role. There's so many hooks, so many grooves, so many catchy moments in this album, and the songs are really anthems. I love this album. Yeah, so many good tracks on this. Just the sheer force of the melody with the guitars and the keyboards combined, as well as the vocals, it just makes it so memorable. Some songs are dreary and melancholic, but in an atmospheric way, so it's absolutely fantastic. So probably my favorite track on this is Weed Out the Weak. Great chorus in that song. Yeah, it's dreary and melancholic, but it's fantastic. So Hang Him High is a good one as well. Global Domination, Taste the Extreme Divinity, and probably my other two favorites apart from Weed Out the Weak are The Quest, very melancholic and atmospheric with the use of clean guitars, and Tamed, Filled with Fear. That chorus will stick in your head, honestly. So I think this is where all aspects of the band gelled together to make the perfect HYPOCRISY album, in my opinion. So pretty cool artwork too. It's kind of dark though. Dark as in you can't see it very well. Yep, so lyrics, pictures of the band. And it's interesting, with Peter's raspy singing style, you can sort of understand a lot of the lyrics anyway. Yep, so band's still a 4-piece here. And just track listing on the back. So yeah, I know I'm biased because I only own these 5 albums, but if someone said to me, which album would you recommend to start with HYPOCRISY? I would probably say this one, even though it's uncharacteristic of their sound, Penetralia, if you like brutal death metal. But if you like the more symphonic melodic death metal and aspects of symphonic black metal, check out this one first, A Taste of Extreme Divinity. It's just such a good album. They were becoming better as songwriters. The point is, when the songs become more memorable, that shows that they're being more effective as songwriters. But yeah, classic album, A Taste of Extreme Divinity. If you like melodic death metal, check it out. Again, my favorite tracks, Hang Him High, Weed Out the Weak, Taste the Extreme Divinity, Global Domination, The Quest, and Tamed. So wow, I just mentioned 6 out of the 11 songs, so you know it's a good one. Yep, so that's HYPOCRISY with A Taste of Extreme Divinity. Now, the other albums which I'd like to own by this band, as I mentioned, are, Abducted and The Fourth Dimension, especially. And then there are some other ones which have been released since, and I haven't heard. A new one just came out, actually, Worship. And then there's another one, but this band, they're such a hard-working band, always putting out new material, and they just seem to be getting better and better. So I look forward to checking out some new albums. But you guys let me know, what's your favorite HYPOCRISY album? Which ones don't I own that I'm missing out on, in your opinion? Let me know. And yeah, let's get some discussion going. So thanks very much for watching this video. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate all of your support. If you haven't subscribed yet and you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. It would help me out and I'd appreciate it. And to everyone else, I hope you continue to watch. So I think I'm all up to date with my threads and everything. So the next video I plan to make is a black metal vinyl video. So we're going back to black metal in the next video, and that should be coming shortly. So thanks again for watching, guys. And in the meantime, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.